Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation on moral sentimentalism. My name is Joshua Babber.
And I'm Darlene Perez, and this presentation is brought to you in part by the offices of Dr. Ahumada and the HUP 104 class.
So, we will present this topic according to three philosophers, David Hume, Francis Hutcheson, and Jesse Prince. David Hume was born from 1711 to 1776. He is a Scottish philosopher, empiricist, and overall skeptic. Hume has argued that there is no permanent self. Our reason is inherently contradictory. And regarding moral theory, his works helped in separating God from philosophy, thus creating one of the first moral theories grounded in morality, in pleasing and useful consequences that result from our actions. Francis Hutcheson was born from 1694 to 1745. He was also a Scottish philosopher, considered one of the founding fathers of the Scottish Enlightenment. His works, similar to Hume, draw on ideas from John Locke. For Hutcheson, we possess more than just our external senses. We also have inner senses or our moral senses. Well, Jesse Prince is currently a professor of philosophy at the CUNY Graduate Center. His areas of research focus primarily on aesthetics, moral psychology, emotion, and consciousness. Prince applies something called experimental philosophy, which uses empirical data to support his theories. In this case, Prince works with MRI brain scans to indicate the emotions that are associated with our thought processes.
Moral, huh?
So, emotions are at the core of moral sentiments. However, emotions and sentiments are not the same thing. Emotions are strong feelings such as love or hate. Sentiments, on the other hand, are the opinions or attitudes based on our emotions. Emotions come first. Reason assesses these emotions, which then leads to actions. People cannot make judgments without emotions, because they help you make the decisions to determine what is right or wrong. Moral sentiments are thus relative, as each individual person's emotions vary, and what is accepted as generally good changes over time. Prince says, if moral judgments were based on something other than emotions, something like reason or observation, we would expect more moral convergence cross-culturally. Reason and observation lead to convergence over time.
But what is it really?
According to David Hume, the notion of moral implies some sentiment common to all mankind, which recommends the same object to general approbation, and make every man, or most men, agree in the same opinion or decision concerning it. It also implies some sentiment so universal and comprehensive as to extend to all mankind, and render the actions and conduct even of the persons the most remote an object of applause or censure, according as they agree or disagree with that rule of right which is established. So what this means is that the ideas of what moral means implies that our sentiments are generally agreed upon by all people. So, all people should agree that certain objects or situations are morally pleasing, and incite that same feeling for all.
Regarding benevolence, Hume states, upon the whole, then, it seems undeniable that nothing can bestow more merit on any human creature than the sentiment of benevolence in an eminent degree, and that a part, at least, of its merit arises from its tendency to promote the interests of our species and bestow happiness on human society. While Hutcheson argues, all benevolence is morally good, universal or public benevolence is morally superior to private benevolence. In application, that action is best which procures the greatest happiness for the greatest of numbers. Benevolence is the positive effect on the human race and society. It is this positive effect on people that dictates their behaving morally. The idea is that while this positivity is good, there are different levels of it. There is what is generally good for all, and what is good for the individual. So we are to do what is best to achieve the happiness for all, and not just for ourselves.
Concerning justice, justice is ultimately created by society to establish some form of social order. If society was able to satisfy all their wishes and desires, then it seems evident that, in such a happy state, every other social virtue would flourish and receive tenfold increase. But the cautious, jealous virtue of justice would never once have been dreamed of. Justice is the preservation of happiness. In a world where everything was perfectly abundant to satisfy everyone's needs, then justice would not be needed. Hume observes, If all society and intercourse cut off between man and man by the primary intention of the Supreme Creator, it seems evident that so solitary a being would be as much incapable of justice as of official discourse and conversation. That justice is useful to society, and consequently that part of its merit, at least, must arise from that consideration, it would be a superfluous undertaking to prove. So justice is useful.
And that's all, folks. What makes our actions moral? For Hume, developing a moral sense takes thought, which leads to an intellectual judgment, as well as a reflex feeling of satisfaction at actions we consider good, and of dissatisfaction at those we consider bad. Hutcheson says that what is morally good denotes our idea of some quality apprehended in actions which procures approbation or favor, attended with desire of the agent's happiness. Moral evil denotes our idea of a contrary quality, which excites condemnation or dislike. In other words, it is an impulsive emotion, not really a thought. Sentimentalism, according to Jesse Prince, has two detached judgments about morality. First, we make judgments that express sentiments even when those sentiments are not at the present time manifesting themselves as current emotions. Basically, we don't always have to feel passionate about something moral all of the time. Despite not having that feeling, though, we can still discern what is wrong or what is right. Second, there are judgments that refer to the motivational states of others, as when we talk anthropologically about the obligations of other cultural groups. So basically, morality comes from either our own sentiments or through the parasitic feeding of the sentiments of other groups, or the way that our sentiments latch onto our culture.
So how do we see this in our lives? Jesse Prince provides scientific evidence to support the claim that moral judgments are based on emotions. One example he uses, in quote, Mal de Oliveira Souza and Eidlinger, 2003, measured brain activity as subjects evaluated moral sentences such as, you should break the law when necessary, in contrast with factual statements, sentences such as, stones are made of water. In both cases, subjects simply had to answer right or wrong. They found that when subjects made moral judgments, as opposed to factual judgments, areas of the brain that are associated with the emotional response were active. Prince also uses various other examples to prove his point. So another example would be the American Revolution. So one of the causes of the American Revolution was due to the high amount of taxes imposed on the American citizens. The general public established that the tax rates were too high and rebelled against the British colonials. They used their moral sentiments and considered it unjust. This again is referring back to the notion of society establishing morality. If a majority of people disagree on an idea, then it comes to the conclusion that it is morally unjust.
But what about, with Fyodor Dostoevsky's Ivan's Challenge, it inspires the perfect flaw for moral sentimentalism. Similar to the trolley theory, would you kill one for the benefit of millions, or would you put everyone else at risk just for the benefit of one? With moral sentimentalism, there are three people: the giver, the receiver, and the detached party. The receiver is the object, albeit a situation or a person, susceptible to the sentiments of the giver. The giver is the person that feels either positively or negatively about something. The detached party, though, is the person that has stood on the outside and aptly used their reason in connection with their sentiments. Has anyone ever told you to relax, think clearly, you're being unreasonable or too emotional? That is an example of the detached party. The problem here is when you experience a trauma, think Paulina, you are not likely to be able to play the role of the detached party. Your sentiments are focused primarily on yourself. People in society commit crimes or make unethical choices despite the fact they know their actions are wrong. Then again, how about...
Well, now I know what emotions are for. We should say that the word wrong refers only to those things that irk me under conditions of full factual knowledge and reflection, and freedom from emotional biases that I myself would deem as unrelated to the matter at hand. The necessity of reason must be taken into account in order to aptly determine whether something is right or wrong. It is easy to think something is overall morally wrong if negative emotional ties are directly connected to the issue. When someone is slighted, their judgment is clouded by emotion affecting their reason. It is good for people to consider how their emotions play a role in their judgments, and thus their actions. Our passion drives us to move and make decisions. Our passion stems from our emotions. When we discern between what is good or bad, and we feel passionately for or against an object, then we are motivated to take action.
And that is the end of our presentation. For all questions, we thoroughly encourage you to take them to Google or Yahoo Answers.